Oh, child. Okay. I can already see it. People are not gonna like talking about this man, but that's okay. They're gonna have to be all right. Okay, what's going on, y'all? So it's editing me here, and I realized that the second part of the video didn't quite come out the way that I wanted it to. So I'm gonna release the first part, which is like the discussion of Chris. I'm gonna release that as a separate video, and then I'm gonna go back and do like the rewrite part. So I'm so excited to do it like that because I think that's gonna give me a better chance to figure out kind of what information I want to add. So let me know in the comments what you think I'm gonna say, or let me know, if you like the format of the video. So, all right, speaking of the video, let's go ahead and get back. I'll see y'all later. Bye. Hello, 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 everybody. So, welcome back to a new video. I am very excited to talk to y'all about this one. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite characters, Chris Halliwell. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Chris for different reasons. They say he was annoying, blah, 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 da, da, da. I realize that I have a very soft spot for characters who are sort of the outlier. So I think that like him, Paige, Dawn from Buffy, like those kind of characters, I think I tend to gravitate towards just because I love me a good old fashioned, not underdog. Underdog is not the right word. What word am I looking for? I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, my point here is we are here today to talk about Christopher and talk about his story and maybe talk about some things that I would change. But before I get started, I want to give a shout out to my lovely patrons they make all of this possible, not just by supporting me and the brand and the channel financially, but also by just giving me love and attention and support and just loving on me and letting me know that I am loved and I am seen. So if you or somebody you know would like to join the Patreon, please feel free to head on over to Power of G. You can see everything that we have going on over there. See if you like it. You can do a 7-day trial of our Worn Line tier, which also includes a Charmed rewatch that I'm currently undergoing. Y'all, when I tell you it is so fun, we have had so many like ideas and so many discussions that led to such wonderful things over there. You can go check it all out and maybe become a part of the family if you want to. So, for those of us who may need a little bit of a refresher, Chris was introduced at the end of season 5. He came along when the sisters were going up against the Titans. He helped and facilitated them turning into Greek goddesses. And then he aided in the battle against the Titans. And from there, his story just goes kind of like off the rails. So at the end of season 5, we see him do something where he sends Leo off, right? And so then we almost kind of think he's destroyed him because of the way like Leo explodes in orbs, which uh, I'll be honest was good to see. Like Leo deserved it. But anyway, when we come back for season 6, he is the sister's white lighter. He is like they find out that Leo is missing. There's just a whole bunch of stuff happening. And I won't go into that for the sake of time, but Chris's arc in season 6 is a little strange because he's the villain, but we also find out later on, spoiler alert, just in case I guess you haven't seen the show, we also find out later on that he is actually Piper and Leo's son from the future who has come back to save Wyatt from being turned evil. And now, that is a lot in and of itself. And getting into the specifics of how Chris gets to that point is really even more because Chris has a plan, and it's a plan that has been talked about in the fandom 1,000 times over, but Chris's plan doesn't necessarily make sense because he puts his own future at risk by coming in. And I, I'm very on the fence about this because I do think that he was a part of why Leo and Piper broke up. I say broke up. Leo left. It's very hard to talk about this because there's just certain things like the fact that Leo chose to leave, but then he was also low-key put in place to leave, but again he still chose to. This video is not about Leo, but it's more about how do we acknowledge the fact that Chris played a part in Leo choosing to leave, or do we just acknowledge that Leo chose to leave to left. For me, I'm somewhere in the middle where I just think that that goes to show that Chris's plan didn't really make sense. And so this is another point of contention. A lot of people feel like Chris was not actually made into Piper and Leo's son by the writers until they found out that Holly was pregnant in real life. Now, me personally, I am in the camp. I don't know this for sure. And God, I wish I had asked him this when I met him in real life. There's a line that Chris says in Oh My Goddess where he alludes to having some kind of a knowledge about the house or something like that. The sisters are very confused, like, how do you know anything about the house? And he kind of like shrugs it off like he typically does and just like, oh, and we go back, like, it's never brought back up.
Step away.
Please, like, I haven't looked in this before. By the way, you should update your Goblin's entry. I'm coming in.
What are you doing over here?
Nothing. You guys keep this stuff forever, you know that?
You knew the Titans were after the elders.
So to me, even though that's a very loose moment and it's one that doesn't maybe play a big factor in everything, I do feel like they had some inkling that they wanted to make him Piper and Leo's son, even like from his first showing. But within his plan, once we get into season 6, that's where it gets very dicey and it gets very questionable why he's doing a lot of the things that he's doing. Like, we see him unaliving Valkyries. He's constantly lying and being dodgy, and he just always has this air about him that he's devious, that he's up to something, that we're not quite sure what's going on. There's always something there. Now, my thing with that is that once we find out why he's actually there, it makes a lot of sense why he would be so guarded. And if this is his family and they're all gone in the future, it makes sense again why he would mentally disassociate, because he doesn't want to be hurt. He doesn't want to get it too invested. He doesn't want to get too emotionally involved. And it makes a lot of sense. It's just the way that it comes off sometimes is why I think a lot of the Charmed fandom does not care for Chris. Now, interestingly enough, and this is just something that I'm throwing out here, Chris is often compared to Prue. And not just mainly because they look alike and they have sort of some of the same characteristics, although he is a lot like Piper. So the two of them being compared is interesting because I feel like Prue has the same writing where the narrative is telling us one thing and we feel something different. And I think that the way that she's written sometimes kind of leads the fandom, certain parts of the fandom, to dislike her because they see her a certain way. That doesn't mean that's true. That does not mean that's true. That just means that that is something that I feel like is an interesting point to bring up. Now, Chris's story hits an interesting spot because at one point we think that he's there to save Wyatt from a demon. Later on, it's revealed that he's actually there to save Wyatt from being turned evil himself and becoming the actual evil himself. And that causes a little friction between him and Leo and the sisters because it's yet another lie. Why would you lie about this instead of just telling us that from the very beginning? But he didn't think that they would trust him. It's a thing. Eventually, he does gain their trust, and he does tell the sisters the sisters all find out that he is Piper and Leo's son. And from there, his story takes kind of like the emotional toll you would sort of think. He doesn't really want to talk to Piper. He reveals that Piper is, gone in his future, and that she died when he was very young. He was like 14, and that he grew up with Victor. So he has a very close relationship with Victor, which is interesting because I don't actually think Victor had been. I can't remember if Victor had been in this season or not. But anyway, I'm gonna put a pause in that. Put a pin in that. Not a pause. Put a pin in it. By the end of the season, Chris unfortunately does end up losing his life so that he can... He loses his life on his birthday trying to save Wyatt. And I can't. Like, every time I think about it, it just tickles me to no end that he actually died on his own birthday so that he could save Wyatt. I can't. Like, that is the most, like, unnecessary... Anyway, nope, I'm not gonna get mad about this. I'm not gonna get mad about it. There is going to be another video on Wyatt sometime in the future. I don't know when, but there's going to be another video on Wyatt. I didn't want to give you a blow by blow of every single thing that happens in Chris's storyline because I feel like this is not meant to be like a recap video. And I could do that if y'all want to see that, but this is supposed to be me just kind of giving you like the cliff notes. And I mean, if you're here, there's a strong chance that you have watched Charmed and you know the story. However, if you have not, please feel free to ask for any additional details that you would like. I would love to fill in those gaps. I just, for the sake of time and I think for the sake of cohesiveness, don't want to go through every single detail of his story. So let's talk about some of the things that work in Chris's story. And I do want to preface all of this by saying that I am fully aware that Chris's story is very confusing, and it's hard for me to do, I think, a proper recap of his story for people who may not know, because there's two eras of Chris. There's like the villain Chris, who's very dodgy and creepy, and he just always seems like he's lying and he doesn't really seem trustworthy. And then there's like the fun Chris. There's like, he's kind of cracking a joke here and there, and he's starting to loosen up, and then we find out that he's Piper and Leo's son, and he has a completely different vibe to him as a character once we do find out that information. And again, I think that that's perfectly normal. I used to be very critical of it, but now I fully understand that that is something that could be, you know, an outcome. One thing that I really like about Chris's arc is the reminder that history repeats itself. Like I think that once we learn he is Piper and Leo's son, it's slapped in our face that history has repeated itself. He lost his mother when he was young. Now again, he wasn't a child, or a baby. He was like 14, but he lost his mother when he was young, and he was raised by Victor, his grandfather, because Leo was not really in his life. So it's interesting to see that parallel between him and Piper. Like, she lost her mother when she was very young, and then she was raised by her grandmother. So again, we are now getting this cycle of history repeating itself. We also have another generation where there's an absent father. And it's just but it is very interesting to watch this story unfold. And I love the issues that he has with Leo, because I think it rounds his character out. And I think that it plays into the two of them not really having the best relationship, even though Chris did send this man to Valhalla. So I kind of understand why they didn't have a good relationship to begin with. But I also have my own personal reasons for loving this kind of dysfunctional father-son relationship, but that's a whole other story for a different day. Maybe that I'll tell on my like vlog channel, Real Life with G. You can go follow me. But again, going back to Victor, I also love the fact that he has this close relationship with him, because it almost feels like Victor was able to make up a little bit for not being there for his daughters. Now, the reason I told you to put a pin earlier in talking about Victor is I don't remember off the top of my head if Victor and Chris had ever shared a scene prior to them sharing a scene in high school reunion. I can't remember off the top of my head. Now, that's significant for Chris's arc, because I feel like they do this thing unintentionally where they do things that don't make sense. So Piper does not actually try to freeze Chris until, I can't remember what episode Crisscrossed is, but the episode with Bianca. But there's a scene in the episode with Bianca where, for what I would think is the first time, she tries to freeze the room while Chris is there. And he doesn't freeze, and she questions it. And I'm like, is this the first time that y'all are trying to freeze the room? No, mind you, I think this is like episode 7. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But it's very early in the season, but it's still late enough to where at some point somebody should have tried to freeze this man. I say somebody, Piper's the only one who could, but you know what I'm saying. And it's the same with Victor coming around. I think that would have been a really good way to test him. And I'm not sure how the writers meant for his character to go, but if they did mean for him to be Piper and Leo's son, then maybe him being around Victor, he would act a little strange, or maybe when Victor was coming over, Chris would always find a reason to leave. You see what I mean? Like, there could always be, you could come up with a reason why they're never in the room together. Maybe every time Victor comes, Chris goes. And like at some point, Chris, Victor may be like, I don't even know him. Why is he always leaving? And they don't know. And they're just like, oh, that's another one of Chris's lies, things like that. Like, that's just how Chris is. Chris is very weird. He's very da-da-da-da, blah, blah, blah. And then once it's revealed that Victor actually raised him, maybe then you can tell us, oh, well, that's why. I done already got into the rewrite part, Lord Jesus. Okay, my bad. I done already got into the rewrite part. I have moved a little too ahead of myself. But with that being said, I do think that those elements of Chris's story works. I think they work kind of separately as opposed to in the grand scheme of the story, like I said, because he seems a little disjointed, but then also it could explain why he's so emotionally unavailable. All right, y'all. So that's the end of part 1. I will see y'all back here next week. Well, we're going to shoot for next week. We're going to say next week. And but for sure, I'm going to see you back here for part 2. So, which will be like the rewrite of Chris and what I would do. So, can't wait to talk to y'all. Can't wait to see y'all. So, bye. What was your favorite part? Oh, comment below what your favorite part was. Bye.